It is 10 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The men's Final Four is set, and Tennessee was eliminated in the Elite Eight by Purdue on Sunday, 72-66, the final. Two Player of the Year candidates going head-to-head as Dalton Knecht scored 37 for Tennessee, and center Zach Edey scored a career-high 40 points with 16 rebounds. Tennessee's season comes to an end with a record of 27-9. Purdue moves on. They will play NC State in the Final Four, who knocked off Duke on Sunday, 76-64. On Saturday, Alabama outlasted Clemson. UConn routed Illinois. Bama and UConn face off in Phoenix on Saturday. In NFL news, Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice is under investigation after a vehicle registered to him was involved in a high-speed crash in Dallas, and the driver of the vehicle left the scene. Also, Detroit Lions cornerback and former Tennessee Vol Cam Sutton turned himself in on Sunday in Florida after being wanted for weeks by police for his alleged involvement in a domestic violence case. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome in on this Monday to 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Less orange back there behind the glass for Lucas Panzica this morning, but that's all right. We will talk about what is arguably as successful a season as the University of Tennessee men's basketball program has ever had, unfortunately, ending on Sunday afternoon against the hated Purdue Boilermakers. It makes me doubly upset that they lost to Purdue, that Purdue advances, that Zach Edey and his 40 points and his big, dumb, long face continue on to the first Final Four for Matt Painter. It all sickens me, Lucas. I can't stand it this morning.
We got Edey'd.
You did, in fact, get Edey'd. And I feel it's more getting Edey'd than the product of bad officiating. Is that a fair assessment? Because I see some comments, I'm greeted immediately, and you can join the conversation if you like, 615-737-1045, the number. You also have access to the F&M Bank chat via Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can live stream the show there. Lethal Latin, 615 on YouTube, says, the one day I want to hear Buck's voice is today. Well, that's good. I need him blasting the officiating crew for their lack of common sense. And I hate to disappoint you on the one day that you actually want to hear my voice, but I'm not going to do that today because I don't think you got by the officials. I think Zach Edey, there's some ticky-tack stuff you could have called there, and certainly he likes to throw his body around when he knows that he's going to be allowed to play. Gets his elbows a little high for my liking, especially if you're trying to survive the amount of fouls that he draws when you're a team that already fouls a fair amount, Lucas, with the physical style that Rick Barnes' basketball teams plays. It's just a bad matchup. You got the best possible performance from Dalton Knecht.
Yeah.
Goes toe-to-toe with Zach Edey on a night where he has arguably his best performance of the season in this game. There was a point where Tennessee led by 11, and very quickly that disintegrated. And you just got worn down by a style of basketball that is going to continue to, unfortunately, I think, present matchup problems for everybody not named UConn, because I still think it's UConn's tournament to win. But you got beat with a certain style of play and a player that was better than your best player in a big spot where you could have pulled it out, but it would have been an upset for sure, obviously. And Tennessee has never beaten a number one overall seed in March Madness as a program. It still ends up being the most successful, or arguably the most successful, college basketball season that this particular program has ever had. And I'm not going to make it about refs today. I'm just not.
I think it is the most successful season this program has had. The last Elite Eight run that Tennessee had, the only other one under Bruce Pearl, did not include an SEC regular season title. You have the win at Rupp Arena. I know they flamed out in the SEC tournament, but just with the way Dalton Knecht kind of took the sport by storm and just big wins throughout the course of the entire season with a brutally tough regular season schedule. I'm willing to say that. I finished this game kind of just thankful for what the last few months have been.
Oh, nobody
for Tennessee
believes
basketball.
that.
No,
Nobody believes that.
I was at peace.
You
I
were
truly
alone
was.
at a bar by yourself. There's no way that you were at peace. You're probably drunk, screaming, crying at rage.
I was at peace. I really was. Look, I'm not terribly. I'm not furious that Zach Edey shot 22 free throws. Like that's what happens, right?
Maybe he deserved to shoot 22 free throws.
Well, I do think that Zach Edey was fouled. I mean, I don't know what the number was. Maybe 2 of those were ticky-tack, didn't need to be called. It's the only way to stop Zach Edey is to foul Zach Edey. He's a cheat code. He was a cheat code yesterday. I do struggle with the notion that a 7'4", 300-pound big man can play that style of basketball for basically the entire game and only get called for one personal foul in a game as physical as it was. I think Edey should have had minimum 3 to 4 fouls called on him on the night. Like you said it, throwing bows. Zach Edey's 7 foot doesn't mean he's not going over the back just because he's taller than the guy he's going over the back for. Like, I do think it was one-sided in that way, but I'm not going to sit here and say that Zach Edey didn't deserve to shoot all those free throws. That's how you stop Zach Edey. It's the only way to do it, and yesterday was a career high for Zach Edey. It was the most Zach Edey basketball game that has ever happened in the history of Purdue basketball.
Which just happens to be his best performance. Somebody adds standing in the paint for 8 seconds, no call. Those don't get called in college basketball. When's the last time you can remember? Like, I bet if we looked up the statistics, how many 3-second calls are getting made in college basketball? How many lane
never.
How many lane violations? Really? If you want to make this today about the refs, listen, you can. I'm just saying that's not what I'm going to do because I don't think that it plays as big a factor in the analysis of why Tennessee did not advance today.
I mean, I think there were multiple travel calls that were missed on Edey. I see in the F&M Bank chat, Chuck says he hooked defenders all games long. I do think that was true, the way he was getting tangled up with Tobe Awaka. I don't know how some of those fouls were not called. But ultimately, I think Tennessee loses this game because Josiah Jordan-James shows up in the early goings and kind of disappears because Jonas Adu just was not himself, could not find his shot at any point, really since after the St. Peter's game in the first round. I mean, that's 3 to 4 field goals right there. Tennessee struggling with mid-range jumpers. Zakai Ziegler not hitting shots in the second half. I attribute those things more to the Tennessee's loss than the officiating. It was one-sided, but I'm not going to sit here and get hung up on it.
It's a fun run, and it probably does not make Vols fans feel better that you fought admirably against a team that's better. And listen, it does not give me any great joy to say that Purdue is a better basketball team, but it's just simply so that you fought admirably in an Elite Eight game against a superior opponent, and they ended up outlasting you at the end. It can just be as simple as that. There don't have to be any major indictments of Rick Barnes today. There doesn't have to be anything about players choking or anything like that in a sport where, or at least in a tournament this year, where it was pretty chalky the whole way through with some examples of teams that are just big old question marks, especially in this Final Four. NC State and Alabama both being in this thing still is surprising to me. But let's hear from Rick Barnes after the Vols lose to Purdue last night.
I can't tell you how much and how special this team was for us as a coaching staff to coach. And the tough part is when you know where we started 5 years ago with Josiah James and Santiago Vestav, and then with the class coming in behind, and where we are today to where I think when people think of college basketball, they know that Tennessee is going to be in the fight. And the hardest thing is when it ends, and then we have a special year with a special guy like Dalton coming into the program. Certainly, I've said no one's changed our program more than Zakai Ziegler. His DNA's changed everything, but that's a tough part of where we are right now. Just a blessing of having a chance to be with a group of guys that they set out with. They wanted to do, obviously win a national championship, play on Monday, and I can tell you this, when they look back on it right now, it's very difficult, but they'll look back and know that they went after it and should have no regrets. And again, I wish I could make it the outcome different for them, but the fact that God's blessed me with the time I've had with these guys is something that I wish every coach could enjoy.
It's good perspective from Rick Barnes. Again, I don't know that it makes Vols fans feel better today. But you do have to acknowledge what this team accomplished, how good they are in the in just, I guess, how good they are in comparison to teams that Rick Barnes has had before. They're arguably the best one that Rick Barnes has had. Certainly the best as far as, did you hear that cricket sound too? Did you just look at me? There's some kind of, I think Bert left some kind of bug in here. He probably didn't get his flea and tick medication. There's some kind of cricket noise coming from Blaine and Dawn, and who else sits on that side? Do you hear it? Kayla.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, well, it's going to disorient me the entire show, which I'm sure was Bert's purpose. We'll figure it out later. 615-737-1045 is the number. Philip is up first this morning to react to the Vols' 72-66 loss to Purdue in the Elite Eight. Hello, Philip.
Hey, guys. How you doing this morning?
We're great.
Let me tell you something. As a true Vol VFL, battle a VFL guy, I am totally happy with the University of Tennessee. No more battered Vol syndrome. Here's the deal. We have Randy Boyd as president, Dante Plowman is our chancellor, and Danny White, Josh Heupel. We got Tony V, we got Rick Barnes, and even Kelly Harper, and our university is on the rise. We are not winning championships yet. I am happy that our basketball team made the Final Eight. Yes, I would have loved the Final Four, but it didn't happen. But we're on the rise. We turned around yesterday, had a horrible, bad loss in baseball on Friday, and ended up winning the series against the little old Georgia Bulldogs. So let's get the battered ball syndrome gone. It's over. Lucas, you don't need to do it no more, my friend. It's over.
Philip says you're cured officially. Thank you, Philip.
I can feel it. It's just something's washing over me.
Well, you do look like a revival preacher today.
I feel like a Jehovah's Witness.
People are suggesting that you have a prom date after this.
Limo's picking me up out front.
In the FNM Bank chat, somebody has also suggested that you may be officiating the Vols basketball funeral later. Can you confirm or deny?
Yes, I'll be working on my eulogy in the break.
What will you be doing actually later, which requires you to look like a substitute math teacher today?
I got to go straight to Jodas Park. I do not have the luxury to get changed after the show because we shoot Spotlight, our Apple TV show, on Mondays. It hits Nashville's home team page on Apple TV Wednesday afternoon, so check it out. But yes, I have to go straight there after the show, so I am subject to you guys making fun of me each and every Monday, and I can live with that.
I don't think you can. He's very sensitive.
I'm not mad. I'm not mad.
He's very sensitive about his outfit choices now that he's TV's Lucas Panzica, which has delighted me for the past couple of weeks. So, yeah, you can check out that on Apple TV. And an unfortunate draw for the soccer team this weekend. I didn't want to tell anybody that it was going until I was already there and had the result in hand. They didn't lose, but they didn't win either. Unfortunate. We'll talk more about the tournament. We'll get into some Titan stuff. L'Jarius Sneed trade made official since last we've spoken. We'll get to all of that throughout the course of the day. But coming up next, Belmont men's basketball coach Casey Alexander, our tournament analyst, will help us work through the weekend's results and preview a little bit of this Final Four matchup to come. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. Big weekend of hoops. We've got a Final Four officially set. For Vols fans, they will not see their team advance. Purdue undoing them in the early game last night. Is NC State now America's team? This is the question. DJ Burns, he's one of us. He's a person out there just absolutely dominant. Actually, he's not one of us at all. He could be a damn left tackle at the college football level if he wanted to, probably.
He's a Tennessee legend. What are you talking about?
I cannot believe how much I have learned about DJ Burns in just these last few weeks, because I don't think I paid attention to, and I don't think this is just a me thing. I don't think the country was paying attention to NC State really for much of the regular season. Of course, they win the conference tournament. They go on this, what is this now, 9 games in a row that they've won, including beating North Carolina, the likes of Duke, of course, continuing Louisville teams that have won. And I know Louisville's down bad this year, but like
bad
programs who have won championships in the ACC, and NC State is just out here in the middle of this streak, rolling them no matter what, they're currently constituted of. And I know it wasn't Duke's best year, although they, an Elite Eight appearance is not anything to turn your nose up at. Either way, is NC State America's team? Have we decided? Can this be confirmed with consensus?
I mean, Kevin Keats was going to get fired. Like, they were 17-14. They were hovering around the 500 mark, bottom seeded type of team in the ACC tournament. And now here they are in the Final Four. And their women's team also in the Final Four. So, yes.
America's team.
Has to be.
Okay.
I mean, who else qualifies for that right now? On the men's side.
It's not Purdue.
Nobody wants to see Zach Edey succeed. UConn already did their thing last year. Now they're just running through it again. Went on a 30-0 run against Illinois.
Is that true? Does nobody want to see Zach Edey succeed? It's not just me. It would make me very happy if that was a national consensus. Because Dennis Kelly, former Titans tackle, has texted me. Do Vols fans ever not whine or blame anyone but themselves when they lose? Get out of Dennis's mentions, you vultures.
I will say it's just not enjoyable. And I know you know that, watching Zach Edey over the years.
Oh, no, I hate him.
As someone who hates Purdue. But even for the neutral, it's just not enjoyable to watch a guy not even have to jump. Did you see him cut down the net?
Oh, no, yesterday? I know. It was absurd.
Doesn't even need a ladder.
He just reaches this up. Long, just creature-like limb reaching up, grabbing the net with his scissors. I was selfishly rooting for him to maybe not snip a whole finger, but maybe just the tip of a finger accidentally, because I'm petty like that. But I don't know. Look at who continues to be the MVP favorite. Well, maybe not this year, but Nikola Jokic doesn't jump, and he's the most dominant player in the NBA. So for people who look at Zach Edey that way, he's not fun to watch. He's a little bit, I don't know, if I use the word mechanical to describe Zach Edey, do you feel like that's an accurate assessment? Because that's how I feel, just stiff. He's efficient, and they certainly have it set up well where they understand how to get him the ball in the most advantageous positions. And also he's an incredible advantage because of his size. It's not fun.
No,
but
it's like Terminator.
Yeah, but Purdue fans are overjoyed because now listen, if Purdue was to lose, well, we can talk about this with Casey Alexander, who joins us now as our tournament analyst when he's not busy being the Belmont men's basketball coach. Good morning, Casey. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm great, thanks.
So can we agree that nobody wants to see Zach Edey succeed across the country as Purdue advances to the Final Four for the first time under Matt Painter?
We cannot agree on that. I would love to see him succeed. The pride of Indiana basketball right now.
Oh, my God. Don't do this. I had Tennessee. I had Indiana. Indiana obviously just miserable this year, and Tennessee not miserable. Put up a great fight against Purdue yesterday, but unfortunately was not the better team. How would you describe Edey's game, Coach? Because I look at him just kind of robotic, mechanical. It's hugely efficient. And obviously the way that he plays and how many fouls that he draws is a huge advantage for them as well. But how would you describe his style of play?
Yeah, coaches would call that fundamental, more so than robotic or mechanical. He's, I think what simple is always better when you're talking about post players, and he's developed such just great confidence from positioning and simple basketball plays. They use him exactly how they need to. Their players around him completely unselfish, and he's a load in there that is just almost impossible to stop, and the numbers bear that out.
For Tennessee, it felt like Vols fans, if you want to go on Twitter and find all the different ways where Zach Edey could have been called for fouls or lane violations or what have you, and try and psych yourself up about the officiating yesterday in that game, I think it would be very, very easy for Tennessee fans to do, and some of them have taken that path in terms of how they're coping this morning. But I just really felt like it was a bad matchup from that standpoint. Yes, Edey likes to use his body. Yes, he throws his elbows around a little much for my liking without consequence. But I just think for Tennessee, who fouls a lot as far as their style of play against Zach Edey, that was always going to be lopsided. And to complain about things like how often they were getting to the free throw line, Coach, I just don't find that viable as analysis today.
I totally agree with you. I mean, he draws more fouls per 40 minutes than anybody in the country by far. Tennessee played them twice, and both games were the same result as far as the number of free throws that Purdue shot, especially Edey. And so it's a little bit of a fool me once, fool me twice scenario, if you ask me. My own son showed me plenty of the screenshots where Edey was fouling, but you can't work the game that way. You got to figure out how to stop him. I do not subscribe to the fouls are supposed to be even between the two teams category. He's great. Tennessee fouls a lot, and they got punished for it.
So how do you stop him, Coach? Is it more about getting a base that is more of an immovable object to not let him move around? Is it about cutting off supply lines? I mean, if you don't have a 7'4" center, how do you stop Zach Edey, and how does NC State try to do that?
Yeah, it's definitely the million-dollar question, and if there was a simple answer, we would see teams defend him consistently the same way. But and some of it is dependent upon like what kind of team that you have. Clearly, Burns at NC State, DJ Burns has a chance because he can hold his ground. The first thing when you're defending him is you cannot let him get to his spots. You'll see a lot of pin down actions from Edey where he's going to set a screen and then he's going to seal the post, or ball screens where he sets a ball screen, he runs to the rim, and then he seals and posts. So keeping him off of his spot so that he doesn't catch it is in prime position is the first step toward defending him. And then my opinion is you just have to be disruptive or keep him off balance is a better way to put it. I think if you're going to go double him every time, he's going to pick you apart. If you're not going to double him at all, he's going to score at a really high level or get fouled. And so you have to play a little bit of a guessing game with him so that he doesn't have the rhythm and control that he's so good with.
Coach Casey Alexander is here with us breaking down this weekend's Elite Eight action. Of course, the Final Four now set. All right, if we can't agree that we are all rooting against Zach Edey, because I'll continue to keep that belief throughout the course of however long Purdue seasons last, can we all agree that NC State is now America's team because DJ Burns is a phenomenon?
Isn't it crazy what they've done? And they lost their last 4 games heading into the ACC tournament, and 10 out of 14. They're losing to Louisville in the first round of the ACC tournament at halftime. Louisville. They bank in a 3 against Virginia in the next round to send the game into overtime and ultimately win. And now here they are 9 games later and playing in the Final Four. It's a great story. Congrats to them.
What has been the difference, though, for them, Coach? Because as Lucas brought up, Kevin Keatts was on the hot seat throughout the course of the early part of the season. As you mentioned, they had those early struggles and have been able to iron it out over the course of now what has become a 9-game winning streak. What do you see that's allowed them to continue to keep their season alive?
Yeah, I'll say this. He was on the hot seat the last week of the season, literally the last week of the season. They lose to Louisville or they lose to Virginia. I think they've got a new coach by now. And so what changed? And really, I don't think it's one thing. I think it's, a byproduct of what basketball is, which is a great momentum game. And that can be, within the game, that can be from game to game, which is what it is in this case. And they're playing with such great confidence. They're playing really, really well together. They're playing with great energy. And they're an ACC team with plenty of talent. So you put all that together, and you can accomplish great things. One thing that's really interesting about them is, I don't think they have. Well, I know their top 7 players are all transfers. Maybe not necessarily this year, but they came from somewhere else. And so, if that's how you build your roster, it's going to take time. And it's too coincidental that that's how they're playing so well right now, just to attribute it to, well, they finally figured it out. But I do think that's some of it.
Is UConn inevitable?
Pretty much. I think most of America wants to see UConn and Purdue. We all think that they're the best 2 teams, 2 all-American caliber 5 men playing against each other. I think that's the best matchup. But what UConn has done is just crazy good. 35 wins already. Their average margin of victory in the tournament is 17. Their average margin of victory on the season is 18. I mean, they have dominated everybody, and I would expect that to continue.
Casey Alexander here with us on 104.5 The Zone, helping us break down some of this March Madness action. I know that were you surprised to see Houston go out the way that they did this weekend?
I wasn't surprised after Shed got hurt.
Yeah.
If he had played and been healthy, then I definitely would have been surprised there. But, I mean, he's such a good player, such a valuable player, clearly. And, when they lost his services, they were a different team. And, that's another great thing about our game. I mean, in one 40-minute game, a lot of things can happen. I think if they line up and play that and replay that game 10 different times, Houston would still win 7 or 8 of them, even without Shed. But in that one moment, they got the best of them.
If NC State is not the most surprising team in the Final Four, it's Alabama. They beat Charleston, Grand Canyon, North Carolina, and Clemson to do so, and they do it the way that you would imagine Alabama would, at least in this last game, being lights out again from 3. Nate Oates he's not been shy about the level of defense that his team plays, Coach, but they have found a successful formula to keep their season alive and to advance to the Final Four for the first time in program history.
Yeah, I think it's the classic survive and advance, because in the tournament they have not. It's not like they've just rolled through these 4 games and they've made 23s a game, which is the strength of their team. They just found ways to win the game. But in another team, a lot like NC State, that we talked about earlier, they lost 3 out of 4 games heading into the NCAA tournament. Their only win was an overtime win against Arkansas. They were not playing very well. And so for them to be sitting here, going to Phoenix to play in the Final Four, I'm really, really surprised. I think they're going to have a short stay, but I'm really surprised at what they've done. Their formula for winning, no doubt, is just to get it rolling offensively, create a lot of tempo that Purdue doesn't particularly enjoy. They can play fast, but they don't want it. So if Alabama wants to keep playing, they're going to have to get in that 90 points, 100-point range. They scored 100 points 10 times this season. Pretty good.
Yes, thank you.
Coach, as we look at the potential national championship game matchups for a week from now, I probably sound bitter in saying this, but I don't think the average basketball fan wants to continue watching Zach Edey. Right? Do you think?
No, because we hate him.
Okay.
We hate him.
Well, you're biased on this too. But I feel like the average basketball fan would rather not watch Zach Edey in the national championship game. But from a coach's eye, what would be the more aesthetically pleasing national championship matchup to you, given that UConn and Purdue are the 2 best teams in this tournament?
I mean, that's what I would like to see. I mean, I think that they clearly are the best 2 teams in the tournament. I think it would provide the best game for us next Monday night. I think all of us, when we get around the Super Bowls and national championships and things like that, we want to watch good games, and that's your best chance to do that. Edey is, their style can be a little bit difficult, but for the average fan, I think the average coach has great respect for what they're doing. I've said this a lot. Coaching, the magic of coaching is getting your teams to do what you ask them to do, and Purdue is phenomenal at just executing game plans and strategies, which by and large means get the ball inside to Edey.
He's Coach Casey Alexander of the Belmont men's basketball team. When he's not hanging out with us, you can see him on News Channel 5 with our buddy Steve Lehman, breaking down the tournament action as well. As somebody who is now TV's Casey Alexander, can you give Lucas some tips as he tries to figure out how to not dress like a substitute math teacher on his Apple TV show, Coach?
Lucas, most of it just comes down to hairstyle, and I've conquered that a long time ago. If you can shine brightly, then you got a chance.
Thank you, Coach. We appreciate the time.
Take care.
That's Casey Alexander. Do you want to just shave your head?
I need all the fashion tips. I'll give it a go. I think Megan would kill me.
She would kill you because your hair's looking a little. You're looking a little permy. Is the word that I would use.
She's told me that I should get a perm. Like what she wants for my hair and what I think I would want for my hair are very, very different. So I'm trying to walk that line.
Wait. She actually wants
She has mentioned that before. She has said, like, I think you could get a perm.
Does she hate you?
Because maybe.
If you walked in here
with a perm. Would not be good for me.
I am, listen, I've never been more, I'm always on Megan's side, but I've never been more on Megan's side than I am today. I also think you should get a perm. Maybe that's a show punishment. Ooh, I like that a lot. What, don't we have a bet going right now?
I don't know.
Didn't we do something?
Didn't we say
something tournament adjacent?
Yeah, it was our bracket. You didn't even make a bracket.
No, I don't make a bracket.
You said you would.
Yeah, I lied.
It's interesting. Alabama gets to the Final Four after Brandon Miller leaves. So what is Tennessee's response going to be to Dalton Knecht, who is now out the door? How does Tennessee replace that scoring? Alabama has an SEC Player of the Year candidate this year in Mark Sears, a guy that can drive them scoring the ball. Does Zakai Ziegler need to take on more of that? Do they need to add it in the portal? I don't know.
But the thing is, the answer is all of the above because, Lucas, you bring up like what they do to replace Dalton Knecht specifically. I don't know that we could go the rest of our lifetimes without seeing a transfer player have that kind of a season.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't just exist in the portal, and I don't think anybody prior, as we talked about, because Indiana was pursuing him too. I don't know that anybody could have possibly anticipated what it is that Dalton Knecht
not even close
has done this season and likely playing himself into the first round of the NBA draft, though we'll see what that looks like in a couple of weeks.
This will be an interesting offseason, though, because I think yesterday was big for JP Estrella, who comes in off the bench, forced to. Jonas Adu did not play for like the last 17 minutes of that game. It's performance combined with foul trouble, but it was a bad day for him. Adu theoretically would come back next year. Toby Awaka would come back next year. And JP Estrella grew as much as anybody in this tournament with the impact that he had. The best defensive possessions I felt like Tennessee had against Edey were with Estrella, guarding him and just trying to make life hell for him. But Freddie DeLeon has gotten some minutes in this tournament. Cam Carr, some talented young players on Tennessee's bench that are going to have to grow pretty quickly. But I'm fascinated to see how Rick Barnes attacks this offseason in the transfer portal with Knecht out the door.
615-737-1045 is how you chime in if you would like to react to Tennessee and what now looks like an interesting Final Four is about the best way that I could put it, with some unexpected participants. Don't forget that if you haven't gotten your tickets for the Install live taping of the Install with Greg Cosell and myself at the Analog in the Hutton Hotel on Friday, May the 3rd, you need to do it now. Be there live as Greg breaks down the entirety of the Titans free agency class, including L'Jarius Sneed, and the upcoming draft class, which is not that far away as we officially enter draft month, kids. Congratulations to all of us. We're going to take questions from you guys, and it's all to support a great cause in the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Tickets are on sale right now, starting at $25. Just go to 1045thezone.com today, and you can do just that. Lucas mentioned the idea of replacing Dalton Knecht, and as I mentioned, it's going to be a multi-pronged approach. One would imagine. Brandon Rushing agrees with at least part of your assessment, bringing up Cam Carr being a big-time scorer, just wasn't ready to play a big role this year. And, of course, they had a ton of depth, so it was tough to crack this particular lineup, I think, with so much veteran experience. We'll take your phone calls coming up next. and also dive into a couple of different results. Keeping an eye on the Nashville Predators now that we're in the final weeks now of the regular season. Where are the Preds after a couple of disappointing results? We'll do that. Some Nashville SC. Will Levis talk later. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045. Jump in on the phones if you want. People wanting to react to the Vols loss to top-seeded Purdue yesterday, 72-66 in the Elite Eight Easter action. Hope everybody had a happy Easter, that you got to enjoy yourself with friends and family instead of being like Lucas and being lonely by himself at a bar watching his basketball team lose.
I was with people. I want to make that clear. I was with people. I feel like that makes a huge difference.
I don't know. Listen, have you never gone to a bar or a restaurant by yourself? Do you fear eating alone? Are you one of those people?
I don't. I appreciate eating alone, but I feel like I never get the chance to.
No, I'm so sorry. Are we bothering you?
People just want to hang out with me all the time.
No, your problem is you're comfortable eating at any given point in the day to where people are just wandering around you doing their regular day-to-day tasks and you're shoveling a taco in your face. Dave in Mount Juliet wants to talk Vols. Hey, Dave.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, I tell you, I've been a basketball fan of the UT forever, and Dalton Connect made this year fun to watch. They tried to teach him to play defense, but he's an offensive machine. I just get to thinking of what if DJ Burns was still there playing with him. Would that be awesome or what? But because he was an offensive player too, when he was with the Vols. And I just look at that, I thought, man, we could probably won it all if we had that big man. And then one other thing, more and more I watch the games, and we keep talking about how physical the games are getting and everything, and the refereeing, and we have women fight in it, and we're going to have men end up fighting in it. They called the game yesterday. There was a lot of fouls in that game, and we fouled that big man a lot, and they fouled us a lot that wasn't called, and there was a lot more that should have been called. But if they don't revamp the officials and get that done, we're going to see a lot of fist fights in women and men. I appreciate you taking my call, guys.
Thank you for the call, Dave. We appreciate you. So a free throw disparity of 33-11 for Purdue and Tennessee yesterday. Again, I'm not going to disagree with you that there could not have been more calls on Purdue. It's just not the biggest. It's not my biggest objection today.
It's not the biggest reason they lost.
Correct.
It's just not. Tennessee needed more from various different role players that they just did not get from Adu, from Ziegler, from Josiah, Santi missing an open three. It's just not the biggest reason. But, I mean, we were like midway through the second half before Edie's first foul. And it was like, okay, all right, come on. What are we doing here?
I just picture you alone at a bar shaking a fist very vigorously. That's your television broadcast.
It's fine. I'm fine.
Are Preds fans fine? Because they have just had one of the best franchise record in terms of point streaks ended, and now recently are on a 2-game skid. They lose in Arizona 8-4. We talked about it a little bit on Friday. They drop a game over the weekend to Colorado on the road 7-4, and now come back home to Bridgestone Arena tomorrow to play the Boston Bruins. We got into this a little bit Friday, just the idea, all right, streak had to end at some point. Not the worst thing in the world. You don't love them getting, just handled this season by Arizona the way that they have, especially with that kind of result. And this game against the Avalanche looked kind of similar. They got an early lead and then just got shelled throughout the course of the rest of the game. Disappointing for sure, but if you're going to work out some kinks ahead of the postseason, then now is the time to do it. That way you can make the necessary adjustments and head into the Stanley Cup playoffs with a full head of steam.
Got to get hot again. So 8 regular season games left. And they return home for Boston tomorrow. A little 2-game homestand. Host St. Louis on Thursday and then hit the road again to the Islanders, the Devils, before coming back home and hitting the road a couple more times. But 8 games crammed into these next 2 weeks for the they got hot too early crowd. All right, they took these 2 on the chin over the weekend. Got to get hot again.
Well, and a huge part of that game seems to be based off the analysis, just Ryan McDonough's 5-minute major and them having to clear that off throughout the course of the game. He's a huge stabilizing force for them back there, and over the course of that, Colorado was able to turn a 4-3 deficit into a 7-4 lead. So not what you want in a perfect situation, not the end of the world. Preds are bound to have some kind of luck turned back their way after just being one of the hottest teams in the sport for the better part of a month and a half.
For as good as they were defensively during that point streak, the law of averages has caught up to them a little bit these last couple of games. 15 goals allowed in 2 games.
Shutouts were fine. Now they're getting shelled. Not ideal. Soccer team, help me with this. Why does every game continue to end in a draw? It's infuriating. They get a lead early. They give up the goal late. The bicycle kick by Godoy is one of the most athletic things. We weaseled our way into the supporter section on Saturday. Didn't plan to go to the game, but just a last minute situation, and found some seats down in the supporter section. We were sitting with some listeners to the show, so it was always good to see you guys out and about in public. And right behind the goal where Godoy scored, right behind the net where Godoy scored that bicycle kick. Why the hell can't they protect a lead?
Well, it is in contention for sure for the best goal scored by a national player since they came into the league.
It's electric.
Yeah, they go down 1-0. They score 2 goals in stoppage time of the first half. And this was kind of reversed last year, post-Leagues Cup, when they went on that crazy run, came that close to a trophy. And then their struggles after Leagues Cup were not about their defensive structure or identity, but it was about their output, their kind of inability to break teams down. Hani Mukhtar went a little cold, and games are ending scoreless, 1-0, 1-1 type of thing. Now it's kind of gone back around where Nashville is scoring goals. They've had 10 different goal scorers this season. It's more than they had until like the halfway point of 2023. And they're leaking goals a little bit here and there. My biggest answer to that is a revolving door on the back line. It's like an offensive line if you're just constantly revolving starters. That's happening right now with injury.
I can't relate at all.
Oh, right. Walker Zimmerman, Lucas McNaughton have been in and out. Jack Mayer was pulled out of the game yesterday. Shaq Moore was injured out last weekend, the right back. So they've kind of had that revolving door. And the good news on that is the one thing that you feel good about Gary Smith in Nashville being able to fix, especially when Walker Zimmerman comes back. So that if they can continue to score at a high rate, I think they will settle down defensively and start to make those 1 points into 3 points. But big game coming up on Saturday. They just needed a good performance against Columbus after the 5-0 loss at LAFC. I think they got the good performance. They just didn't get ultimately the win. But Saturday's big against Philadelphia Union before a little break in the schedule. And then they got to go down to Miami and face Messi once again.
Taylor H. and Jason Thompson on YouTube both blaming me. No, they didn't lose. They drew. That's not a loss. That's a draw.
It actually is really, because Taylor mentions this in the F&M Bank chat. In January, it was really tragic. The all-time leading scorer for the Panama national team, Luis Tejada, passed away, who was known for his bicycle kick. A teammate of Godoy's for the Panamanian national team for years and years. So it's crazy that Anibal Godoy, who serves his purpose for this team, he's a midfield warrior, not exactly a goal scorer, gets on his bike and scores just that absolute stunner 2 months after Tejada passed away. Just a kind of a cool sports moment. And Godoy will be on the radio on Wednesday night, NSC Backstage, 8 to 9 p.m. every Wednesday during the season. So check that out.
Did it annoy you that I was texting you for phone chargers and Bert was FaceTiming you from the concourse as we took tequila shots?
Yeah, y'all were doing your absolute best to knock Will and I off our game. Didn't happen.
Yeah, okay. We will get into a variety of different Titans things during the course of the second hour. The L'Jarius Sneed trade made official. Some comments from Rand Carthon that we will get to you. But coming up next, Alabama is in the Final Four for the first time in program history, and I still don't understand how the hell they got there and Tennessee didn't. We'll talk about that coming up next.
It is 11:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The men's Final Four is set in stone. Tennessee eliminated in the Elite Eight by Purdue on Sunday, 72-66. Two Player of the Year candidates went head-to-head. Dalton Knecht put up 37 for Tennessee. Center Zach Edey scored a career-high 40 for Purdue with 16 rebounds. The Vols season comes to an end with a record of 27-9. So Purdue moves on. They will play NC State in the Final Four, who knocked off Duke on Sunday, 76-64 on Saturday. Alabama outlasted Clemson. UConn routed Illinois. Bama will face the defending champs in Phoenix this coming weekend. In NFL news, Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice is under investigation after a vehicle registered to him was involved in a high-speed crash in Dallas, and the driver of the vehicle left the scene. Detroit Lions cornerback and former Tennessee Vol Cam Sutton turned himself in on Sunday in Florida after being wanted by police for weeks after an alleged involvement in a domestic violence case. Flyer Foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Now, March Madness is always filled with a variety of different upsets, a variety of different results that leave you scratching your head, that sometimes delight you, that may have won you a little extra money in your bracket pool. But this year, the Final Four is as confusing as any that I think I've seen. Purdue and UConn, we knew that they were probably going to be here. Purdue gets past the Tennessee Volunteers yesterday afternoon to advance to the first Final Four since 1980 for the Boilermakers. That was a surprise to me. Matt Painter's first as the head coach there, and he kind of shakes off a little bit of the tournament choker vibes that he and Rick Barnes had both carried for the considerable portion of their careers. But then there's Alabama and NC State. Now, obviously, as Lucas mentioned, Alabama will see UConn before getting the opportunity to compete for a championship. If they get the opportunity to compete for a championship, it will have to be by way of the Huskies. And nobody looks capable or on the same, even close to playing field or court as UConn has all year long. 3 losses the Huskies have, all true road losses. And really, the environment for UConn the entire tournament has been electric. It doesn't feel like they're playing road games whatsoever. Alabama is surprising for a variety of different reasons, and it's the first time they've been in a Final Four as a program. Of all the different SEC tournament teams that we thought might make a run, Tennessee included, I think Alabama may have been actually, Lucas, on the bottom of my list of the 7 that got in.
Me too. I put them on upset alert against Charleston. I said, if any SEC team's really going to get upset in the first round, it's going to be Alabama. Idiot. But no, they finished the season so poorly defensively. They lose to Tennessee at home, really is the big game that got Tennessee the SEC regular season title. Then they lose to Florida. They're giving up 100 points almost on a biweekly basis in the last month of the season. They go one and done in the SEC tournament just like Tennessee and Kentucky did. And now here they are in the Final Four. I mean, it is a credit to Nate Oates, who a decade ago was a math teacher and a high school basketball coach in Michigan.
Mark Sears hasn't done a completely seamless job replacing Brandon Miller from last year's Alabama's team, but he's done a pretty damn good job filling in some massive shoes that Brandon Miller left behind. When they got bounced by San Diego State in the Sweet 16 last year, and San Diego State obviously went on to compete in the championship against UConn, got dusted.
Compete?
Yeah, compete
Strong word.
Compete. Wrong word there. Compete. Not the best.
They played.
They were there.
I don't know if they competed.
They were physically present for both of those games. I mean, they did try their best.
They tried hard.
They just got smacked by a much better basketball team. But when Nate Oates and them got bounced last year as a number 1 overall seed, it was certainly a better version of the Crimson Tide that we are seeing in front of us right now on a variety of different fronts. Not just because Miller is a better player than Sears, or last year's Alabama team was much more efficient defensively than this one that'll just let you walk by, AAU style, basically, if you try and challenge. But the thing that has been the difference for them, a significant percentage of their points all year long have been from 3. And they are 15-1 this season, according to ESPN Stats and Info, when making 12 or more three-pointers, as they did to advance over the course of this weekend to get past Clemson. And again, Lucas, how many times did they score 100 points?
9.
Well, now 10.
In the regular season, 9, yes.
Okay, very nice cover-up by you. I thanked Casey Alexander for using that stat. I didn't mean that was a weird reaction for me to have by citing that, but I feel like I've said that over and over and over again all year long, and then Casey had it, and I was like, thank you for supporting me here, Coach. Anyway. Alabama, 4-7 when allowing 90 or more points, which has happened quite a few times throughout the course of the year. So we know that the defense is still the best place to get them. But this is as good a three-point shooting team as Nate Oates has ever had, and he seems content to just kind of live with it, like to ride it out, just to make it as simple as, all right, boys, go out there and outscore them, and let's hope that we don't have a bad night from 3. It seems kind of simplistic to boil the analysis down to that around Alabama, but again, I am shocked that of all the 7 SEC teams that made this March Madness bracket that we are still talking about the Crimson Tide and not even Auburn. I mean, I know Auburn got unceremoniously booted, and Tennessee made it about as far as I think everybody expected them to. They were a capable enough team of making the Final Four, but it would have been unlikely for them to get past Purdue for a variety of different reasons.
It was interesting with this Tennessee team because the expectation was to get back to the highest point in program history, which is the Elite Eight. And that's kind of where it ended. I mean, you could say the expectation was Final Four and championship, but I think the majority of us had this sort of house money feel to getting over that hump of appearing in the Elite Eight. Anything from here will be great, will be undoubtedly the best season in program history. I still think Rick Barnes is undoubtedly the best coach in program history. He now has the most tournament wins in program history, officially passing Bruce Pearl, when they knocked off Creighton in the Sweet 16.
Bruce Pearl very quickly ended up on a television broadcast set.
He did. Did you see him and Candace Parker talking about Tennessee basketball for a couple minutes?
Oh, yeah.
People
were alleging in the chat that Bruce yearns to return to Rocky Top. What are you doing back there?
Yeah.
What is that eyebrow raise?
Bruce never wanted to stop being the head coach at Tennessee. It was he left his kids there. Both, his kids went to school at Tennessee. He kept his property in Tennessee, and he wrote out that show cause, largely living in Knoxville. And I remember the first time Bruce came back to Tennessee as the head coach of the Auburn Tigers. And my goodness, the emotional scene that it was, that Bruce hadn't really got it going yet. Tennessee won on that day. But he's coming, he's like handing out, can't remember if it was donuts or pizza to the student section. It was like he was the head coach at Tennessee, as the visiting coach. He came out to the student section, he's high-fiving fans, and he's super emotional in the post-game presser. I think he's very happy down at Auburn, and he's had great success at Auburn, but I don't think Bruce Pearl ever wanted to stop being the head coach at Tennessee. But I'm glad Tennessee fans are past the point of pining for Bruce over whoever our current head coach is.
Because you got it right.
Right.
You got it right.
And that was the case when Konzo was in, with Donnie Tyndall. It was just, can we please just bring back Bruce?
How nice it must be for me to live through Archie Miller and Mike Woodson and the rest of these slaps that just are polluting my program, while Tennessee just it goes through a couple of down years with a couple of tomato can coaches, and then immediately gets it right with Rick Barnes, who's the best basketball coach in the history of the program.
Yes, now I
want to die.
No, so you can be appreciative of what Bruce did, because he did. He absolutely lit a fire under this program at a point where it desperately needed it in the modern age. And Rick Barnes has come in and finally built off of that after Konzo and Donnie could not.
So, as you mentioned, this is the first time that Tennessee has reached the Elite Eight since Bruce Pearl was the coach. They've only done it twice, and it was this season. Tennessee, I believe, over the course of its history, Lucas, you may know the exact number. How many times have they won the SEC in the regular season?
Ooh.
Is it like all time? Is it 10? Is it 11? I feel like it's somewhere ballpark that range. I don't know the number off the top of my head. But point being, you have never won at this rate in the regular season.
12. They've won 12 regular season titles, including this year.
12 including this year. Okay, so you win the SEC in the regular season. You go on to make it to the Elite Eight and compete in the Elite Eight, but that's ultimately where your season ends, just like a couple of years ago against Draymond Green and Michigan State. This is the most, this is as good as it gets, or at least as good as it's gotten as a Tennessee men's basketball fan.
Yes, it is. 1,000%. Are you kidding? Winning in Rupp Arena every other year.
I'm just saying, because I'm not sure how to gauge the reaction. A lot of people are really, really disappointed. And I completely understand that. You had a legit chance against Purdue. If you want to find reasons to be slighted by officiating or something else that you felt like kept you down where you should have rightfully advanced, you're welcome to do so. We're not going to do that this morning. That's not the biggest reason why they lost. But I think there's, it's tough. I guess it's just tough for a fan base to have that quick turnaround for tons of appreciation for what Rick Barnes has been able to do, even though that's probably the proper reaction today, outside of just being disheartened that you're not going to continue to play for a Final Four.
Disheartened is right. But that is, I'm not kidding when I say that was ultimately what I felt when that game came to an end. It was just, I'm just appreciative for this team and what they did in this last calendar year. The Dalton Connect experience was electric. Zakai Ziegler continues to be, I think, one of the most fan favorite type of athletes that has come through Tennessee in a very long time, and obviously he'll be back next year. So, yeah, I do think that is the prevailing feeling right now, as much as it sucks to miss out on your first ever Final Four and watch Alabama do it in the same year. That's tough. I'm not going to lie.
Hate that.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
Hate that.
Don't know why they have to have so many nice things.
You can take it out on them this football season because Alabama now a basketball school, Kentucky obviously a football school.
First program to do it in the same year as far as getting to the college football playoff and the basketball Final Four. Alabama the first to do that. So hat tip to them. Tennessee was not able to get it done. Obviously got a tougher draw in the Elite Eight than Bama did, but Bama's got a tougher draw in the Final Four than Tennessee would have gotten had they advanced to play DJ Burns and NC State. That'll be fun, DJ Burns against Zach Edey. I am fascinated at what that matchup looks like. Obviously, Edey's going to have the size on him like he does on basically every other human on this planet, but DJ Burns, a big dude. He's tough to move around down there. He's tough to back down.
There's no way he's 275. They're lying.
Burns?
They're lying to us.
Is that what it's listed as?
Oh, that's what he's listed as.
Yeah.
Not a chance in hell. Are you kidding me?
That dude's fun to watch.
Join 104.5 The Zone for our 2024 Spring Golf Classic on Friday, May 17th. Going to be a fun month of May between the Install Live Show, the 104.5 The Zone Golf Classic. It's at Greystone Golf Club this year. The 2024 Spring Golf Classic will be a day accompanied by great food, cocktails, and prizes. You can choose between 2 flights, 8 a.m. or 1 p.m., and spend the day teeing off with us on Friday, May 17th. To purchase a team, visit 1045thezone.com today. Titans made the L'Jarius Sneed trade official late Friday afternoon. We'll tell you what Rand Carthon had to say about the newest addition to his secondary coming up next. All right, so on Friday, the Titans made the L'Jarius Sneed trade official. Deal done between the Chiefs and the Titans. Tennessee gets the 7th-round pick swap. And Sneed, in addition to sending a 2025 3rd-round pick to Kansas City to complete the deal, they give him a contract on the back end of that as well. Average annual value of $19 million. Keeps him right in line with Jalen Johnson and that payday that the Bears gave their stud corner this offseason, and immediately solidifies your secondary, at least your starting secondary, with a safety to be named later. Fair to say? Should we be talking about Elijah Molden as a starting safety? I just feel like that is not an ideal situation. But I don't know. Maybe that's where they...
I think we should absolutely be prepared for that possibility.
I'm prepared for him to compete for the job, but I can't imagine that they can't find in this safety market in free agency right now, they can't find a better solution than Elijah Molden as a starting safety. It's just not the best use of him as a player, at least it would seem, based on the sample size that we have of Elijah. Anyway. So, Rand Carthon gave some quotes to the team's official website as a part of this. It's a huge get. This is a quote. It's a huge get. It gives you 3 top-flight corners in Sneed, Chidobe, Awuzie, and Roger McCreary that can just flat-out cover people. He matches Cheeto's energy of being a physical, aggressive corner that can also play in run support. In fact, can you grab that Greg Cosell audio that we used, I think, on Thursday, Lucas? Because I think that also speaks some of what Rand Carthon is talking about here.
On Sneed.
On Sneed, please. Matches Cheeto's energy of being a physical, aggressive corner that can also play and run support. You see a lot of the way the game is going with the toss crack and forcing the corners to come up there and play more and run support. And we have guys who are willing to stick their face in there and tackle people, which is, of course, secondary to their coverage abilities. Greg Cosell was on the podcast that we do every week called The Install. We're doing a live show on May the 3rd. Get your tickets now at 1045thezone.com. We're going to do a deep dive on Sneed at the live show, but I asked Greg for just some 1,000-foot view thoughts of Sneed as a player, and he kind of echoes this sentiment from Rand Carthon about the physicality and the style, not just the player.
But here's the one thing I'll say about Sneed, and then we'll leave it alone so we can get into more detail, at the Install on May 3rd. He brings not only quality play, but he brings a swagger and an attitude. And I think in some ways that can be seen as just as important. So, because he is a press man corner, which doesn't mean he has to play press every snap, but you see him get right in the face of receivers. He's physical, he's aggressive, he's competitive. And, I'll just say this. They've now signed Awuzie and Sneed. So what was a major weakness a year ago is now a strength. And the one thing about this league now, the way it's going, is you can't cover up for bad corner play. And now they do not have bad corner play. So think of it this way. If you feel your corners aren't good enough, that shrinks your playbook. When you feel your corners are good and you can play man, that expands your defensive playbook. So we'll leave it at that, but that's really the way it works.
Just trying to give themselves the ability to be as versatile as a defense as humanly possible. These 3 starting corners do that. So, of note, and this is courtesy of the team's PR, he started 57 games. He's only 27 years old, but starting 57 games over the past 4 seasons. 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Chiefs. In that span, he has 10 picks, 6.5 sacks, and 40 passes defense. The sack number matters there. The best corner group that they had recently, prior to this, is Logan Ryan, Malcolm Butler, and who was the nickel corner? Was it Adoree? Well, I guess Adoree was playing on the outside. Logan spent some time in the nickel, and him and Butler could both play on the outside. Logan Ryan more the nickel corner in that situation with Adoree Jackson. We do have word that L'Jarius Sneed is going to speak tomorrow to the media, according to Titans PR. So we appreciate them putting that out.
11:30.
So you'll hear from L'Jarius Sneed. So I guess I'm going to have to figure out a way to do it from the facility, huh? Or if they can accommodate me, I'll text Robbie after this, and we'll see if I can't get down there for that press conference, and we'll carry it live, of course, for you. But yes, 11:30 a.m. Central Time, you will hear from L'Jarius Sneed. This is the best group of corners that they've had, certainly in recent memory. Is it better than Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler, and Logan Ryan?
We don't know. We don't know. We could say on paper it is, but we were saying that on paper about that Titans secondary. Did Adoree Jackson necessarily live up to a first-round billing?
No, he's still out there, by the way. Still available.
He's a free agent.
Mm-hmm. Still currently on the open market.
So I have trouble saying this is the best group of corners the Titans have ever put on a field together.
The YouTube chat immediately disagrees with you, where somebody says, yes, without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Before they've even taken a snap. Before they've even...
I love sports.
Have they even worked out together?
Obviously. He's not even in Tennessee yet, and he's automatically the best corner that the Titans have had ever. What's wrong with you?
I guess we're talking about on paper in terms of their careers up to this point. Sure, there is an argument to be had.
As an immediate just rebuttal. Rebuttal to you. Well, I don't know yet. Yes, without a doubt.
We'll lead the league in interceptions.
He's a good player. He's a really good player. We talked about this last week. Even if he's not the all-pro corner that he was last season, and again, I should stop saying that because he wasn't technically an all-pro, but his play is
all-pro
caliber. He was absolutely an all-pro snub last year. Even if he's not all-pro caliber in 2024, this is still a very talented backfield on paper. Absolutely. The things that we don't even know what the defense is going to look like necessarily, much less how the corners are going to work with one another. And I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve because he's been in the same place for 4 years. McCreary's been working with the same people for the last couple of years. Now it's going to be very different. Uwuze has the most experience with this because he's been at least with 2 other teams and playing in multiple defenses.
And he's familiar with Brian Callahan.
And Amani Hooker is somebody who can serve as that guiding presence moving forward. And McCreary has taken on some of that too. And honestly, to Elijah Molden's credit, whatever I think of him as a player, and I think that, I don't know, it's just not been as good as people might have expected after that second half of his rookie season. And he dealt with the groin injury, so that's completely fair to keep in mind. But Elijah Molden's got some legit leadership qualities to him that I appreciate that you're starting to see develop from a younger locker room as they turned over a lot of the old heads. Point being, this is something that is going to go a long way to helping them. But the defense, I mean, there's still question marks everywhere. And with Denard Wilson's, how he's going to have this defense executing is as big a question mark as any. Now, again, another Ran Carthon quote from the article that Jimmy Wyatt had to make the Sneed trade official, TennesseeTitans.com, on the trade itself. Because remember, it took quite some time. I don't know, Lucas, when was the first time that we talked about it being really, really hot? It was the noise around Sneed being really, really hot. I came in here, it's either a Monday or a Tuesday.
At least 2 to 3 weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago. So it took them a while to work this out. Carthon on that process, quote, "You just remained patient. You did your due diligence prior to them franchising him. And then when he was franchised, you kind of got a feel on where it could possibly go. And then the Chiefs got the deal done with Chris Jones. You study other teams and try to figure out where they are. So it was one of those things where we used a patient and diligent approach. And when the opportunity presented itself, we were in a position to do it, and we made it happen. And it took effort from both teams to get it done." So right now, including Sneed, even though Sneed's not a free agent, but players that have been acquired thus far by this team.
He was a free agent for a little bit.
Well, no, he wasn't, because they tagged him before free agency began.
They did before free agency began. He was set to be a free agent.
Smart ass. Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, Cheeto Awuzie, Lloyd Cushenberry, Kenneth Murray, Sebastian Joseph Day, Mason Rudolph, and Sadiq Charles, a depth offensive lineman, to join L'Jarius Sneed. This is a legitimately talented team. Or they've added legitimately talented players. I don't know what they'll look like as a team just yet. And we'll get into this about Will Levis a little later, but this raises the stakes for him right out the gate, as it should be. You need to bleep around and find out. And we'll cover Levis's side of things here in just a little bit. The patience, though, because this had a lot of noise from Indianapolis around it, and Tennessee more kind of like louder on the front end and then just kind of lingering in the background, waiting to see if anybody was actually going to make a move on the student. Nobody ended up doing it.
That's the only big move, big swing of any sort that Indy felt like they were in on throughout that period.
They didn't go after free agents. They used the money that they had, because they had as much as the Houston Texans, which I think was good for fifth in terms of available cap space prior to the season beginning or off-season beginning. They spent it all on their own dudes, and they've got good players. It's not a bad investment by any stretch of the imagination. I do think Colts fans, this is because he's done this before, Chris Ballard, where they had all kinds of money heading into an offseason. They ended up using it to pay, who's the right tackle, 72? I'm blanking on his name. Either way, they paid Shaq Leonard. They paid Braden Smith as the right tackle there. I think they paid Quentin Nelson around that same offseason at the point where guards were just starting to make $20 million a year. And now you see that becoming more commonplace, at least in this year's market.
Like, are the Colts a better football team today than they were a month ago? The Titans are.
Titans, well, yeah.
Without question.
Had nowhere to go but up.
In fact, I think the Titans improved the most so far in the offseason. That doesn't mean they are a better team with a better roster than Houston, because that's not the case right now. But I think in terms of point A to point B on where they ended the regular season to now, the Titans improved more in that stretch than the Texans, who are adding depth all over the place.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, the Texans had more to work with prior to the offseason beginning.
And are the Jags a worse football team right now than they were a month ago when Calvin Ridley looked like he might be staying in Jacksonville?
They don't look like they have a plan. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't, but the way that they botched the Ridley thing, and it sounds like they botched it as much as anything, that and his girlfriend not wanting to go to New England. Don't blame him. Or excuse me, his wife.
His wife, yes.
Yeah. Jacksonville fans, and again, I take what I try not to take too much from social media because it's not a representative sample size of how people actually feel, I hope. Jags fans seem displeased with the general direction or lack thereof that Trent Baalke, who's the general manager there, seems to have.
They look like they need to draft a receiver, right? Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, it's
with
Gabe Davis and
Devin Duvernay
and Christian Kirk right now.
That's their wide receiver core.
Blech.
Do you know how many times Trent Baalke in his career as a GM, whether for Jacksonville or San Francisco, how many times has he drafted a wide receiver higher than a fourth-round pick? 1 through 3.
Is this just in Jacksonville, or are we talking about with the Niners?
His entire general manager career. How many times do you think he has drafted a receiver from rounds 1 through 3?
Ooh, this is a great question. I'm going to say twice.
Once. And it was Illinois wide receiver A.J. Jenkins with the 30th pick of the 2012 NFL Draft with the San Francisco 49ers. Jenkins was a healthy scratch pretty much the entirety of his rookie season for the Niners. He was immediately traded after his rookie year, and his NFL career flamed out after 3 to 4 years. Complete and total bust.
Don't love that.
The only times Trent Baalke has drafted wide receivers as the GM of the Jags, 6th round in 2021, Jalen Camp, and 6th round last year in Parker Washington out of Penn State. Trent Baalke historically does not draft receivers, and the only time he has ever used a high pick, a first-round pick on a receiver, it was a horrendous swing and miss.
So Jags fans not having a good time this offseason. It's impossible to lose the offseason, but if you had to, it's probably Jacksonville and Dallas that have kind of...
Most uninspiring.
I would say that is a fair assessment. DraftKings released their season win totals for the 2024 season. The Jags are projected right now 8.5 wins, as are the Indianapolis Colts. You know what the Titans? You want to take a guess what the Titans are? Houston Texans, by the way, 9.5.
Mm-hmm. I bet the Titans are I bet the Titans are like 5.5.
5.5
really?
Is the number. 5.5 projected wins right now, according to DraftKings. So I'm sure there are other places that have probably pretty similar numbers. Does that seem right? 9.5 for Houston, over.
It seems lower than what the expectation should be, right?
For Tennessee?
Yes.
Oh, well, listen, that is the thing that has surprised me the most about their offseason, because they're making, and they have money, so they have to spend something. They have to spend at least to the floor. That's a requirement now in the last couple of years. But like the Sneed and Ridley deals kind of made me look around and say, oh, they think they're better than we think they are.
They're making moves like a team that's going for it, like a team that feels it's in the championship window.
So for their own expectations, they expect to be meaningfully competitive in 2024. And I think I had meaningfully competitive as a reasonable expectation. But the moves indicate to me that they think much more of themselves than anybody else seems to.
So hammer the over. Is that what you're saying?
Oh. I mean, 5.5, yes. 5.5, absolutely. It would be we don't do picks or preseason projections or pick the games on the schedule kind of segments. And it's fine if you do. It's just not our vibe. But if they don't win more than 5 games this year, Lucas, you and I are about to have a field day on the radio show. My God, I cannot imagine. There is no world. I don't want to say this in front of a microphone where places where this can be documented for posterity and for my future shame, but there is no world in which they lose that many games again in 2024. At least I can't imagine one. I don't want to imagine one. Ugh. Speaking of things that you don't want to imagine, a Chiefs wide receiver is in some serious legal trouble with some damning dash cam footage that came out. We'll get into that coming up next. All right, I got breaking Vols news. Give me the Laser Light Show, please.
On 104.5 The Zone.
This first reported by Nicole Auerbach at The Athletic. Tennessee is firing women's basketball coach Kelly Harper after 5 seasons. She was scheduled to be a part of the Tennessee tailgate tour that was that's making the rounds, I think, this month, as a matter of fact, with Barnes, with Heupel, and now they'll have to find a new women's basketball coach if they've not already begun their search. But the school announced just moments ago that they will begin a nationwide search for her replacement, looking to return women's basketball on Rocky Top to the winningest program in the sport. 108-52 was Kelly Harper at Tennessee. Never finished above third in the SEC. 4 postseason appearances, never made it past the Sweet 16 with the Lady Vols. This year, they lost to NC State, who continues their season.
Her former employer, by the way.
At this point. How do we feel about Kelly Harper getting the axe?
This is the right move.
I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah, and it's not celebrating someone losing their job. I think it's more of celebrating a program acknowledging that it has been below standard. So for Tennessee to call itself a program that expects championships, that expects to be in the Final Four and compete for SEC championships every single year, then you have to put your money where your mouth is, and that's what they're doing here. The corresponding move is going to be the interesting thing because they've kept it in the Pat Summitt family. They did it with Holly Warlick. They did it with Kelly Harper. And to me, the only move that could be considered acceptable that checks that box would be going to get Carol Lawson, who has done a phenomenal job with
Duke looks so good.
Yes, the Duke women's team have been excellent under Carol Lawson. Made a nice run this year in the tournament, and they've just slowly improved in the 3 years she's been there. Apart from a Carol Lawson move, go get somebody that's a proven winner, proven winning championships. Like, let's not make it to where a job requirement is played for the Lady Vols, coached under Pat Summitt. It's just about, if you want to honor Pat Summitt, go get someone that'll win championships, not somebody that has been in the program before.
What is it? And it's not unique to Tennessee, I don't think, but there has been, at least since in my time here, there has been a tendency to go with those kind of people to replace whomever, whether it was bringing back Phil Fulmer because he's a Tennessee guy. And listen, I understood the explanation at the time. You want somebody who cares as much about the program or the various programs that you have as you do as a fan base. And that there would be more investment from a Phil Fulmer or a Holly Warlick or whomever to try and get their respective programs up to speed or up to snuff based on championship expectations that football and women's basketball have had for basically their entire existence at the University of Tennessee.
Think about this. For about 30 years in football and women's basketball, the head coach of that program from the 80s through the 90s through 2007, 2008 was Johnny Majors / Philip Fulmer for football and Pat Summitt for Tennessee. All born and bred Tennesseans, all that played at Tennessee, all that spent the majority of their career at Tennessee. So for a long time, that's all Tennessee knew was reaching the most success it ever had in football and women's basketball with somebody that was a Tennessee person. So now you have to officially move out of that. You've done that in football. You've certainly done that in men's basketball. You got to do it now in women's basketball. That does not have to be a requirement to come in and be the head coach of the Lady Vols.
It is notable that this is today, April 1st, is the day that her buyout was set to drop. Her current contract was 5 years, $5.5 million. They hired her back in April of 2019, 5-year, $750,000 contract. Went 38 and 18 in her first 2 seasons, then got the first of 3 contract extensions that she would be provided throughout the course of her career. She received a $50,000 raise and the use of a private aircraft 3 times a year as a part of her contract extensions. So the buyout at this point, and I'm trying to, we have some reporting here, some numbers from the Knoxville News Sentinel. If her contract was terminated between April 1st, today, and March 31st, 2028, which is when it was going to run through, she receives 50% of the annual compensation that she would have earned between the termination date and the end of her contract. So they would be paying her $1.1 million per year if they had fired her yesterday, as opposed to firing her today. So she'll get $550,000 through 2028.
Danny White not messing around. This corresponding move will be very interesting. Some people in the F&M Bank chat saying, bring Dawn Staley back to Tennessee.
She seems to have a pretty good thing going. Indiana almost had them. Almost had them. They were just getting rolled by South Carolina in the first half of that game and had a really nice comeback late, but it was just out of reach. I don't think you'd have to back up the Brinks truck to get Dawn Staley out of South Carolina.
Yeah, big time. I don't know.
She's the best coach in women's college basketball, right? It's not Gino anymore.
Yeah, it's Dawn Staley. They're undefeated right now.
Sure.
I think.
But, I mean, this has been consistently over a manner of year. Like, Dawn Staley has surpassed Gino.
And think, too, if you're Danny White, look around at what's happening in women's basketball, at the superstardom that we're about to see tonight with Angel Reese and LSU
Iowa.
and
Let's go.
Caitlin Clark in
I
Iowa.
am so hyped for this game.
The crowds at these games, the stars, the must-see TV that women's basketball is turning into all over the country. Danny White saying, we need to be in on that. How are the Tennessee Lady Vols not a part of that right now? So, big move by Danny White here, and I think it's the right one.
615-737-1045 is how you can react. Again, if you're just now joining us, the University of Tennessee has moved on from Lady Vols basketball coach Kelly Harper after 5 years on the job. To Lucas's point, there's a huge college basketball game tonight between the LSU Tigers and the Iowa Hawkeyes in the women's side of the bracket. Plenty of controversy around LSU this weekend. Did you see what was reported or what was put in a report about them that a publication, I believe,
L.A. Times.
The L.A. Times.
Yeah, Kim Mulkey went on a rant.
Well,
she's been doing a lot of that lately.
Well, I don't normally agree with Kim Mulkey and her rants. I thought the one she did about the Washington Post was just basically to distract you from the fact that she's about to get her world blown up by something.
Did you read that article?
The Washington Post article?
Yeah.
I have not yet, no.
Kim Mulkey, I don't know what you were afraid of coming out in that article, but the article was, I'll save it for maybe dumbest thing in sports this week.
We'll do it later. We'll do it later in the week. The LA Times referring to the LSU basketball women's team as dirty debutantes, which is just terrible. It's the most LA prim and proper D-bag possible way to refer to a women's, and also wildly sexist, way to refer to a women's college basketball team out of the state of Louisiana.
If you're gonna do that, you need to do it like British publications at the height of British journalism.
What do you know about the height of British journalism?
No, what you got to do is make it rhyme.
How would you make it rhyme?
Or the alliteration. The alliteration is key.
Okay, what are you referring to? Something specifically in the long, storied history of English journalism that you apparently know off the top of your head? What moment? What rhyming headlines are coming to mind?
I got to find an example, but sometimes
this is such a weird thing for you to stand about. At the height of English journalism. What are you talking about?
I got to find some examples because some of them rhyme or are like tongue twisters just for the sake of alliteration in the headline for like British tabloids. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Oh, my God. 615-737-1045 is the number. The final hour, the biggest stars of the Final Four. Are they even in the men's side of the bracket? We'll talk about it next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Breaking news, the Tennessee Lady Vols have fired head basketball coach Kelly Harper after 5 seasons at the helm. Harper, a former Tennessee player under Pat Summitt, never finished better than third in the SEC during her time as the head coach in Knoxville. The Lady Vols never made it past the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament and were eliminated in the second round this season against NC State. Speaking of college basketball, the men's Final Four is set in stone. Tennessee eliminated by Purdue in the Elite Eight on Sunday. 72-66 was the final. Purdue moves on to face NC State, the 11 seed, who knocked off Duke yesterday in the Elite Eight. It'll be Bama and UConn playing the other Final Four matchup in Phoenix. In the women's game, the Elite Eight begins tonight as Angel Reese and LSU face Caitlin Clark and Iowa. 6 p.m. is the tip-off. UConn and USC will face off tonight at 8. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final Four is officially set after a huge weekend of college hoops on the men's side of things. A huge game coming up tonight in the women's bracket as well. Welcome into the final hour. We're happy to have you. 615-737-1045 is how you can let your thoughts be heard. You can also live stream the radio show if you're so inclined. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Make sure you subscribe to 1045 The Zone on YouTube while you're there. I have some thoughts on a variety of different things surrounding Will Levis that we're going to get to here in just a second. But since we do officially have the Final Four in place, I think that's worth diving into first and foremost. Purdue, who undid Tennessee yesterday, will face America's team in NC State. You have Alabama getting is it a pleasure? The opportunity to try and do what nobody else has come close to doing so far in this bracket, which is to stop the defending national champion UConn Huskies. The biggest stars of the Final Four, it's kind of interesting to look at because the biggest stars in college basketball are on the women's side. I would say they probably have at least 2 women's players who are bigger stars than anyone on the men's side of things in Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark.
With that said, watching Zach Edey and Dalton Knecht go head-to-head.
It was electric.
With elite performances yesterday to the 2 probably biggest player of the year candidates. We all have an understanding Edey's going to win it for a second year in a row. But, man, that was just cinema.
Well, and he officially cinema,
unless you're a Tennessee fan.
It's a weird way to describe your basketball team losing. Cinema, art. No, not quite. Zach Edey will be the 2-time defending national player of the year. Before long, he'll, I'm sure, receive that. Well, when do they get that award? I guess it doesn't matter. It's after the tournament at some point. Either way, not relevant. He is the best player in college basketball, as was evidenced yesterday afternoon, going head-to-head with Dalton Knecht, as we said, with arguably his best performance of the year, putting up 40.
The most unstoppable player in college basketball.
Okay. You really want to do this?
Yes. The most unstoppable. I'll give you that.
He's the best player in college basketball.
Is he the most skilled?
No.
Is he the most talented?
He's the most skilled at what it is that he does.
He's the most unstoppable.
Lucas, what is the difference between those two things right now? Who is the best player in college basketball if it's not Zach Edey?
Okay, let me ask you this.
Are you going to pick somebody on Kentucky's roster? Because I'm going to laugh at you. I'm going to laugh at you immediately.
Who is a better basketball player? Who is better at the game of basketball, at all the things included in the game of basketball, at shooting, dribbling, defensively? Is Dalton Knecht or is it Zach Edey? Better at the game of basketball?
Zach Edey.
Really? Or is Zach Edey just like 7'4"?
No.
And pretty good?
No, he's not just 7'4". Matt Painter has words for you if you think he's just a 7'4" load in the middle of it that you can't stop and can just reach over with his freakish alien arms and score over you. No, he is a skilled robot, basketball robot, okay? He knows what he has to do to put up 40 to stay out of foul trouble. And on a night where the officials were generous to Zach Edey, let's say, Zach Edey, for what he does, is the best player in college basketball. You're not going to come in here with an argument about Dalton Knecht, and because it's not about who's a better pro player. Knecht may end up being a better pro player, though he's got plenty of things to figure out on his own as well. He's not a lottery pick for certain.
Well, he's definitely more of a pro prospect than it's not close.
He's absolutely more of a pro prospect. I will hear you out, but in the same way that you would get on my neck every time I did this with Joe Milton, you cannot tell me that Zach Edey is not a better college basketball player than Dalton Knecht is.
Better college basketball player.
That's what we're talking about.
Sure. But no. I'm talking about better at the game of basketball.
Shut up.
And there are differences in that conversation. Danny on the F&M Bank chat, he's talking about Knecht as a pro prospect.
I don't care about what they're going to be at the next level.
Dalton Knecht.
In a sport that does not have stars in it, in the men's side of the bracket, you are not going to tell me that the two-time National Player of the Year is not the best college basketball player on a day at not even 24 hours removed from him putting up 40 against your team.
Dalton Knecht is a better basketball player than Zach Edey. Zach Edey is a better and more dominant college basketball player than Dalton Knecht.
Why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this exercise? What do you hope to accomplish? Are you hoping that all of Vol Twitter will descend upon me the way that they have apparently with Dennis Kelly today, who's sticking up for Purdue and Zach Edey? I have no great love for Zach Edey, okay? I don't want to like him. I don't like him. I don't like his game. But to dismiss him as just being bigger than everybody else, which is essentially what you've just done.
It's so much of it. You cannot tell me that is not a huge part of the equation with Zach Edey.
Of course it is. I'm not going to take points away from him because he's bigger than everybody else in college basketball. I'm not doing that.
He is a better college basketball player than Dalton Knecht.
Yes.
But is he a better basketball player than Dalton Knecht? And I think what he is
last night.
I think what he is as a pro prospect should help answer that.
615-737-1045 is the number. Tommy in Nashville's up next. Hey, Tommy.
Thanks, Buck. I'm a ball for life, and I've kind of got the attitude that Lucas has got. We had a great season. And I watched that big monster over in the Maui Classic at the first of the year.
He is a monster, and he's like a Frankenstein monster, Tommy. He has bolts sticking out of the side of his neck. He is a monster.
Let me tell you, and he's improved since the Maui Classic. I promise you, he was strong as an ox back then. We had trouble guarding him over there. But the thing that Lucas says, and I agree with, or maybe he didn't say this, but I'm saying it. If we hit our normal shots that we hit during a game, I don't care if he got 40 or not. We're still going to win. And we didn't do that. Unfortunately, Ziegler had probably one of the worst games of the year for him. And you just can't be good, every night. And that was the big key. It just wasn't his night. And I think if it was his night, the score might have been different. I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
Thank you for the call. It just sounds like, and listen, Tommy probably has the opinion of many of you, and I think Tommy's position is different than Lucas's because what Tommy is arguing is more about last night's result as opposed to Zach Edey versus Dalton Knecht, the basketball players.
Yeah, but Tommy's doing basically what we've been talking about. Tommy's not coming on here saying Tennessee lost because
he's not.
Zach Edey only had one foul called on him. He's saying Tennessee lost because Zakai Ziegler couldn't hit shots in the second half because Jonas Adu just totally lost his shot.
Correct, but the conversation is about Edey and Knecht. And I'm not saying that any criticism from Tennessee Volunteers fans today about Zach Edey sounds like sour grapes because I don't think it is. I think some of it is completely fair. But I'm just not going to entertain a discussion about, because what are they right now? They are college basketball players. basketball player is a much broader term. You're not considering international prospects because we don't produce, at least in the NBA, we don't produce the best players in the world anymore. That's been something, and I know I'm not just talking about Wembanyama. I'm talking about international basketball.
Which Edie is, by the way. He's Canadian. Why
deport him?
Why does your argument have to lack so much? Why can't you just have some nuance?
I don't want to have nuance about this. No, I just brought more nuance to the conversation than you did, saying that there are better international basketball.
Yeah,
not
I just don't understand what that
players.
has to do with the conversation between Edie and Connect. Like it has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Right. Neither does the idea of talking about them in the context of just basketball players, as opposed to the context of which they are competing in right now. Edie is the better player.
He is, 100%.
You can change this. This is the problem with this discussion. You can change it. You can change the criteria to fit whatever you want and come out with a different answer either way, because I am inclined to agree with you that Connect is a more skilled basketball player, but not at what it is that makes them great.
Yeah.
Edie is better at what it is that he does than is Dalton Connect. That's the only barometer that I need. The better basketball team with the better basketball player won the game last night. That is all that I need to justify my argument, not you taking me off in 17 different directions to try and come up with Dalton Connect.
Look at you with a little bit of nuance. I'm proud of you.
Oh, kiss my 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in, the phone lines are popping. We'll get into that. And a discussion about Will Levis, how much the Titans offseason ramps up the pressure on the second-year quarterback. But first, more hoops talk. I don't know if the Titans are going to be all right just by nature of their offseason moves thus far, but they're certainly a better football team than they were a month ago. Not just L'Jarius Sneed, that trade made official on Friday, but Calvin Ridley, Lloyd Cushenberry, Tony Pollard, a variety of other different players that have been added. We'll talk about the increased amount of pressure that it places on Will Levis's very broad shoulders, very capable shoulders in just a second. But in the meantime, you guys wanted to get in on this this basketball conversation that we were having, talking about the better basketball player, depending on how you structure that definition, between Zach Edey, who had 40 last night against Tennessee, or Dalton Knecht, who was valiant in his effort to carry his team, as he has done several different times throughout the course of the season, ultimately falling short, but putting up 37 in a big spot to try and keep that thing close throughout. Tony is in Nashville up next. Hey, Tony.
Hey, man. I just want to talk about the coaching. You know, after the first half, you got a snapshot of what was going on, the coach did. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Tennessee was up by 1 or 2 points. And when the coach seen that they were not even coming close to hitting a 3-point shot, they should have packed it in on Keedy, on the big man, and made them beat them from the outside. But he didn't make that move at all. Any other coach would have done that. Now, once you prove to me that you can hit that shot, then we'll come out of that defense. And by the way, Keedy is the best player in college basketball, without a doubt. I don't care how you put it, whether you love him, hate him, whatever. The fact is, that big man, he's a great player. That's all it is to it. I'll get off the phone and listen.
Thank you for the call, Tony.
You agree with that?
It's not unfounded criticism. Like I do think that because you asked Casey Alexander, what do you do with Edey? Like, what do you do? And to Coach Alexander's point, if there was a consistent way to play against Zach Edey that worked, then that would have been deployed. Now, I think there's a couple of different factors there. What do you make of the personnel decisions that Rick Barnes made? Once it was clear that Jonas Aidoo was just not going to give you what you needed in that particular moment, and understanding that Zakai Ziegler was off his game as far as scoring, because not 40, but as a part of Edey's points, there are 22 free throws in there.
Well, he attempted 22.
Yeah,
14 of them.
Shot 22.
14 points.
Yes. So it's a considerable chunk of his points there. I don't know that if it was as simplistic as what Tony just laid out, that Rick Barnes would not have been immediately able to identify that and adjust. Rick Barnes is not, infallible here. I'm certain in real time you could backseat or armchair coach the Vols in that game yesterday if you wanted to, but I didn't think that was a damning enough in-game decision. All of these things combined to lose them the game, and also Edey was great last night. So I
have no issue with how Rick Barnes managed any game. I thought Rick Barnes coached his rear end off in this tournament. I really did.
I'm inclined to agree with you, because there have been moments in Rick Barnes' career where you could call in-game coaching, or you could call to mind in-game coaching decisions that were made that may have cost them egregiously. This tournament was not one of them. Yesterday's game was not one of them.
I think putting in J.P. Estrella could always be considered a risk, as a guy that just didn't really get any consistent minutes at any point throughout the season, and he gave him a lift defensively against Edey. Had a big lob on a two-handed dunk at one point. That was a big momentum moment. It's a good decision to sit Jonas Aidoo for as long as he did. He was just providing nothing really on the offensive or defensive end, and that was a huge problem. Aidoo was the only one who could even come remotely close to matching Edey's size as far as height is concerned, and even then he's like 4 inches shorter than him. But he just didn't have the base, and he was kind of getting pushed around. Where, did you see how Awaka was defending Zach Edey? Like, the stance that Tobe Awaka was taking, he's like, all right, I'm not going to sit here and put both hands up and try and match this guy's height. I'm going to get low on him. Like, he was down
Trying
low.
to put a shoulder into his sternum.
Had, like, his forearm into Edie's waist, and was just, like, it was just...
Hang on for dear life.
His head was, like, level with Edie's, like, stomach. I mean, he was just, I'm just going to set up a base right here, and I'm not going to let you get past me.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do in that moment. I thought Rick Barnes handled it well. They tried to take away everything around Zach Edey. And
Edey
they
was
did.
just phenomenal.
They succeeded in that.
Yeah.
And he scored a career high, and he scored 40 of Purdue's 72 points. You didn't get a favorable whistle on your end. I don't think it's an issue of too many fouls against Zach Edey, because I do think he was fouled enough times to go to the free throw line 22 times, or shoot 22 free throws. But I do think on the flip side of that, that there was a lot that was not getting called. And if Tennessee gets a more favorable whistle and Tennessee hits a few of those early shots with Jonas Seydoux and they win that game, we're talking about a Rick Barnes masterclass.
Side note, how many times do you think, and I'm sure it's happened before, I don't have the answer to this trivia question, but how many times do you think it's happened in a March Madness game where two players have scored more than half of their team's total points?
Good question.
Edey had 40 of the 72 for Purdue, and Connect had 37 of the 66 that Tennessee was able to put together. That's the kind of clash that we got to witness yesterday, which is what made it fun, even if you don't enjoy Zach Edey's style of play, to see two players who are excelling in for their respective teams kind of go head-to-head that way. Rick Barnes said, quote, "I think it's hard for officials," talking about Edey, "because there's not many guys like that. The game has changed so much through the years, whether you stay in the lane 3 seconds or you don't. If you don't ever get out, it really distorts everything. I'm not saying he did or he didn't, but watching tape, he's a difficult guy to officiate. I can tell you that."
Yeah, he's not going to rip the officials post-game. That's never been something Rick Barnes is willing to do.
Kyle is in Nashville next.
Thanks for taking my call. Real quick, I just, on the Zach Edey being the best player in basketball, Zach Edey's great. Zach Edey is very, 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 very good at what he does. But you can't convince me that he is the best player, pure player, basketball player in basketball. That's like saying that Tom Brady is a better pure football player than Jerry Rice, just because he was maybe better at what he did than what Jerry Rice was. But I guarantee you Jerry Rice is a better quarterback than Tom Brady would ever be a receiver. And same goes for baseball. Mariano Rivera is widely considered the greatest closer of all time, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. But
Kyle, you're changing the definition. You're talking about the best athlete between the two of them, and there's no question that Connect's a better athlete. We're talking about college basketball player. Who's the better one? The answer is Zach Edey. You just made the case yourself.
I feel like if you take the size away, pound for pound.
No, but you can't take the size away. I don't want the. I can't, Kyle. I can't do anything with if you take the size away. I can't do anything about the fact that he's 7'4". You know what I'm saying? Like those kind of arguments, and I'm not, I don't mean to shout you down there, but you can't say if you take the size away when size is no pun intended, a massive part of his game.
The problem here is we agree, because when the conversation is set up to where who's the better all-around basketball player, the better athlete, you and I agree that it's Connect.
Yes.
When it's who is the better college basketball player at doing what they do best and dominating with it, the answer is Zach Edey.
Yeah,
Zach Edey is better at being 7'4" and taller than everybody than Dalton Connect.
That's like
Therefore, he is more dominant. He is more unstoppable than Dalton Connect.
That's just like saying take Dalton Connect's athleticism away from him. What kind of basketball player it would be? Not a very good one. If Zach Edey's not 7'4", he's not a good basketball player. Maybe not the best basketball player in college basketball right now. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in this conversation anymore.
One of those guys is going to be an NBA player. One is not.
I just don't think that you can say that definitively about Edey, by the way. What about Zach Edey tells you definitively? Like, is he Rudy Gobert? Can he be Rudy Gobert? Rudy Gobert, you have to take him off the court in certain situations because he can't defend 1 through 5, but he's been many times over, and I can't remember how many times he's been the defensive player of the year in the NBA. But Rudy Gobert, just because you have to take him off the court in certain settings, is an NBA player. And I'm not saying that Zach Edey is Gobert, but I just don't think that you can be as definitive about that. He will be drafted lower than Dalton Connect will.
If he's drafted.
I think he's going to get drafted.
Oscar Tshiebwe didn't get drafted.
Lucas,
and Oscar Tshiebwe was the most dominant player in college basketball for like 2 years.
Yeah, but he wasn't Zach Edey level of dominant.
Oscar Tshiebwe did not get drafted, and he's kicking it in the G League right now.
I'm not saying he's going to have a long career, but if Cody Zeller can be an NBA basketball player, then Zach Edey can figure it out. Let's pivot, and let's talk about the addition of L'Jarius Sneed. The trade made official over the weekend on Friday. And looking at what the Titans have added in this offseason, Ridley, Cushenberry, Pollard, Owuze, now Sneed, prior to the draft beginning, and there's more players, obviously, Kenneth Murray and Sadiq Charles and all these other guys. Are the Titans a good roster right now, pre-draft? Good roster. I feel infinitely better about them. This is not the same conversation as we just had with Zach Edey and Dalton Connect, but are the Titans a capable roster pre-draft at this very moment? The answer should be yes.
Yeah.
They still have questions at safety, left tackle, God knows, right tackle, honestly. I don't trust NPF at this point. I feel the same about NPF as I do about Traylon Burks. It's just non-factor until they actually contribute something meaningful. Inside linebacker, left tackle, Titans still have needs. Draft and more waves of free agency can rectify that, and this will look like a more whole picture in less than a month. But how much does this ramp up the pressure on Will Levis right out of the gate? Trevor Lawrence is on the precipice of getting one of these $40 to $50 million a year contracts from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I don't know if anybody can definitively tell me that Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. I know he's the next to get paid. I know he's good enough, but there are still enough questions. What are we, 4 years into the Trevor Lawrence experience? Where I'm still looking around and trying to find somebody to definitively tell me that Trevor Lawrence is a $40 to $50 million a year player. The process of figuring this out for Will Levis, Carolina is going to have to do this with Bryce Young. Is this more than just your present? Can this actually be your future at quarterback? Is this viable or not? Carolina has a lot more work to do and a much tougher grading scale to overcome, or grading curve to overcome here, because Carolina's roster, Titans roster is in shambles. Carolina's is worse. And they don't have the kind of draft capital that the Titans do to be able to fix it beyond just the money that they spent this year. The plan has always been to figure out as much as you can around Will Levis and to let Will Levis's growth and development go where it may and try and put him in the best position to succeed with not just players but with coaching, and they've done that as well with Brian Callahan, trying to get the best possible version out of this player. How much more is the pressure ramped up on him, though, specifically? Because these moves, as I mentioned, I think in the first hour, Lucas, Ridley and Sneed, the acquisition of just those two players, makes me think that the Titans think infinitely more of themselves as a roster than I think of them. And not just me. Then the rest of the league is looking around and thinking. I don't know that you can say definitively that they're still not the worst team in the division. Pre-draft, that's probably still the case, although the Jags roster looks pretty shaky right now. Texans and Colts, well, Texans definitely get a much bigger advantage or a much bigger benefit of the doubt than Indianapolis does, but Indy does have a more complete roster, and they've done well to retain their own players. How much better Anthony Richardson can make them than Gardner Minshew did, given how little football Anthony Richardson actually played last year. Huge question mark for them. But the Titans are signaling that it is a meaningfully competitive roster or meaningfully competitive football team that they plan to field next year. And I think that, we're about to find out basically whether Will Levis can do it moving forward right away. Doesn't it feel like that?
They've at least set it up to where we should know. Where we won't be in a Justin Fields situation where you don't know.
I don't want to be. I do not want to. If I'm them, the worst case scenario is just having a question mark around the court. I don't want to get Mario'd again.
Yeah. It's better to know for sure that he's not the guy than it is to have no idea going into the final year of his deal.
And I do feel like teams are in that in that phase where I'm not saying quarterback has become disposable. I just think it's become more disposable.
That's why this
than
is
it was in years past.
Huge year for Anthony Richardson.
Huge.
Because
all of those dudes. Bryce Young, Levis, everybody but Stroud, basically.
Yep.
Because Stroud is the only one that we can say definitively, no, that guy in this situation is good. Richardson, question mark. Levis, question mark. Young, I pity and a question mark. Because I really don't know how much better they can make that team around him for him to be able to figure out whether he can, whether he's going to be able to compete there or not, or if he's going to have to move on, because they move through these quarterbacks so much faster than even, from Mahomes or Deshaun Watson's generation of players. You don't get the opportunity. You don't get the luxury of sitting in today's NFL. Not really.
The red shirt year.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, it's far and few between. And the Titans tried it, right? And they literally couldn't.
Disaster.
Because of injury. That's why I think they go tackle, though, in the 7th pick. Because, again, I know it's about being meaningfully competitive, but it's also about finding out what you have in Will Levis. And we saw how difficult that can be to do when there is no protection and when the tackle spots are a massive question mark. And I'm worried about us heading to a place where right tackle is a question mark if your best option at right tackle ends up being Nicholas Petit-Frere. So that's why I would be very surprised if they don't go tackle at 7, no matter how much we talk about Neighbors or Odunze or who else might be there.
We'll get to your phone calls here in just a second and some comments in the F&M Bank chat. Quick reminder, though, that the live taping of The Install with Greg Cosell, where we're going to break down your draft class, whether you had a tackle, a wide receiver, a inside linebacker, or all of the above. We'll be breaking it down with Greg Cosell Friday, May the 3rd at the Analog room in the Hutton Hotel. Greg and I are going to be there with you. We're going to take your questions. We're going to have draft film breakdown. We're going to have free agency film breakdowns. We're going to have a full bar also. How many live podcasts you get with a full bar included in the experience? Tickets are on sale right now at $25 to purchase tickets. You can get a GA ticket, a general admission ticket, or a VIP ticket, which comes with dinner and a part of the happy hour proceedings an hour before the show starts as well. All you got to do is go to 1045thezone.com, and Lucas will do me the courtesy of dropping the link in the F&M Bank chat for all of you here in just a moment, too. Kyle is in Spring Hill up next. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Buck. Just making sure that I was on the right subject. You were asking how we feel about our football team after free agency?
Yes.
Yeah, well, let's just be honest. Everybody left, and the rest of them were the draft picks of John Robinson's SAG classes. So we were putrid, and we had to buy our way back to average. But the difference, in my opinion, is Will. I think he's the deal. So if he can take the jump like I believe he can win us 10, 11 games and have us in a wild card, maybe competing with Houston for the division, man. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not as solid on him as you seem to be, Kyle. That doesn't mean I'm not out on Will Levis. I'm excited by the idea of him, but that's kind of still the phase. 9 games is not enough for me to declare whether this guy can be more than just your present quarterback situation.
You can't declare it, but you also can't dismiss it.
Which is what I'm saying. I'm not dismissive of Will Levis either.
Like, what would we have thought if somebody thought, no, I think C.J. Stroud can step in there and take this team to a division title and a playoff win?
Prior to the season beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to call them fools because, well, again, he did nothing. He did things that no rookie quarterback has ever done before in terms of the statistics.
I mean, even if you said that after his first preseason game where he struggled, right? Everything's moving fast. He had a really bad experience in his first preseason outing.
Oh, my God. They got rocked by the Ravens in week 1. Like, that wasn't any kind of and I know Baltimore ultimately undid them in the playoffs as well, but that wasn't any kind of great C.J. Stroud performance in his first NFL action. Listen, for Levis, for me, it's about the accuracy issues, okay? Because he's more shotgun than he is sniper. You know what I'm saying? He can make throws to every part of the field. He is truly gifted with his arm talent. He may have the best arm talent of any player that came out of that quarterback draft class last season. But there are still some times where, and listen, this is why you get guys like Hopkins and Ridley, because if you throw it up for those 50-50 contested catch balls from time to time, and Hopkins makes you more right than wrong, even if you have a little variance to your accuracy the way that Levis does, then that's fine. You're constructed to account for that stuff. But I want to know how much can he be, to use some terms from Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, two of the guys at the NFL Network who are as good as scouting as anybody out there. Are you a truck or are you a trailer? Is Will Levis Ryan Tannehill was a trailer, right? Ryan Tannehill is somebody who you have to have a fair amount of things around him to be able to get the best version of him. And I'm not saying that that's not any player. If Derrick Henry is a truck to Ryan Tannehill's trailer, though, you understand my analogy a little better. Can Will Levis be a truck? Who is the Titans' truck without Derrick Henry? Who is pulling this team forward? Who is the person going out there with the game on the line to put you in the best possible position to succeed? Is it your quarterback? I can't answer that question definitively yet, though he has the tools to be able to do it, which is what this year is about. This year is the bleep around and find out year for Will Levis. And after this year, you need to have, I don't want to say definitively an answer, but you need to have 90% of your answer as to whether this person is your quarterback moving forward or not, because you have to be ready to cycle on to the next one if he's not. Or even if you're just kind of on the fence about it. Again, I don't want to be Marioted. Last call for phone calls. We'll get to him here in just a second. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Below MSRP? Below MSRP. Below MSRP. It's pretty simple. Two Rivers Ford sells all new non-specialty Fords below MSRP.
Mortgage Professionals in Middle Tennessee. Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, owner of Wesley Mortgage. I'm a true local, born in Mount Juliet, met my wife at MTSU, and I live in Franklin. While every other mortgage company is cutting back, we're rapidly expanding and investing. Are you sick of feeling like an operations employee to ensure your loans are closed on time? When you look around your office, it doesn't look the same. You're missing people. You're missing your friends. Is anyone having fun? We're having fun every day. As the official mortgage provider of the Tennessee Titans, I've personally recruited the top local operations team to ensure your loans are closed on time. So you get paid, so you get to spend time building your business, and you get to have fun at work again. Now is the time to join our team. To start a confidential conversation with our local president and COO, visit whywesley.com. whywesley.com.
The guaranteed offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
Last call for phone calls if you got them. Levis, Vols, or otherwise, 615-737-1045. That's the number. Speaking of things locally that should get you excited, 1045 The Zone has a cool thing that you can be a part of. Taylor Swift obviously has been a very big part of our sports fans' existence for the last calendar year, but the Eras Tour, the tour that broke all the records, you can be there if you're ready for it. Just listen weekdays for the national text keywords for your chance to win. For more info, visit 1045thezone.com. So wait, she's still touring? I'm confused. How long does this tour last? This tour that was in Nashville a year ago?
I think the tour lasts over multiple eras. Is that the point of it? Not only is it every Taylor Swift era, but it also will span eras of history. That in 60 years, Taylor Swift will still be on the Eras Tour.
You proud of that joke?
Filling out 120,000 person stadiums.
You really petered out with whatever's in your cheek that you've tucked away like a squirrel.
Pickle.
I don't know that you could have said anything comedically funnier than pickle. God. This is such a dumb radio show. JR in Nashville is next. Hey, JR.
Hey, guys. I'm going to go another way. I think that our quarterback, Will Levis, is going to have less pressure on him with a big if we find an answer to that left tackle. We were talking about Alt and that other dude being ready to start first year. So if that is the case and we get one of those two guys, then I think the pressure is going to be off of Will to show what he can do, because I think he showed us in spurts. He just needs to have that opportunity to be consistent. I'm like one of the other callers. I really like Will Levis. I like his competitiveness. I just think he's going to be the real deal unless he gets hurt. And the way he gets hurt, if we don't support him, and I think he feels like with all of these additions through free agency that the pressure's off of him a little bit. So I'm looking at it. I think there's going to be less pressure on him. That's my opinion.
Thank you for the call. What'd you fake him out with the music? What happened there? It started and then it just died.
I thought it was done. I was pulling it down.
Okay. It is an interesting concept, right? I think fans will put more pressure on him from their perspective than he may feel, right? He'll probably feel as good as he's ever felt out there as a pro because he's had terrible football players around him and now he's got legit competency around him. Quickly, before we wrap up the show, there is a huge basketball game tonight between LSU and Iowa. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Kim Mulkey, the whole thing. I don't know who I want to see win more because America, there does not seem to be, I can't find anybody in the country that has a bad thing to say about Caitlin Clark. Angel Reese and LSU, much more polarizing, though we're not going to traffic in whatever the hell the LA Times was doing this weekend with dirty debutantes, as if that's not wildly sexist and racist to publish something about a women's college basketball team that way. I don't like Kim Mulkey. Just objectively.
But I like Angel Reese.
I love Angel Reese. And who's the guard that they've got with the she just dropped her new EP. She's up at the microphone after they beat, I can't remember who they beat the other day, but she's sitting there, go stream my new single or whatever. Anyway, she's electric too. But I also like Caitlin Clark. Like, I think Caitlin Clark's a great story, and I don't want to see it end. I think to have Caitlin Clark's story end without a championship would be a missed opportunity. Don and Franklin, last phone call that we'll take today before some polls. Hey, Don.
Yeah, I just going back to Edie. I think that I think Lucas is off his rocker. He's going to play in the NBA. He's going to be drafted. I read things yesterday. He's not even going to be drafted in the first round. Yes, he is. I looked it up. He's going to be picked in the first round. There's 32 teams. Tell me the top 4 or 5 NBA centers, and then tell me who the other ones are on all the other teams that are better than Eddie would be.
Well, I just don't think centers matter in the league that way is the larger point, Don, but I do appreciate the call. They're dinosaurs now. It's not that Edey couldn't play. I mean, Zach Edey, like Roy Hibbert is the name that always comes to mind for me when you talk about the way that basketball changed. Because all of a sudden, Roy Hibbert and Paul George and Lance Stevenson were competing in the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron James all the time, and then all of a sudden, Roy Hibbert couldn't play with the Lakers because the game changed like that with Steph Curry and the Warriors. So, there's not better centers out there. But again, the value of the center in today's current NBA is the biggest question mark around Edey. All right, polls, please.
And now the polls have to be updated. We've reached a crucial point in the show. It's time to update the polls. Take my hand and get to the chopper. Lucas Panzica will give us the final update. Why am I yelling? It's giving me a headache, but it's only a headache. It's not a tumor. Hasta la vista, baby. I'll be back. Why am I yelling?
No, wait. Before
the number,
no. Just let me get it out before you.
The numbers they're not taking. Like the button, their button is freezing up when I try to hit it. It takes like the third try before I do it. Okay, now you can talk.
What are the polls?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Tennessee fans, how will you remember the 2023-24 basketball team? Brad says, best team we had. Eric says, getting the opportunity to watch arguably one of the greatest players to wear orange. I'll be telling my grandkids about him. Tanner says, with nostalgia and bitterness.
You can't just turn my microphone off every time you disagree with me.
But I did.
I know, and it pisses me off.
Is this the best group of starting cornerbacks the Titans have ever had? 90% say yes.
TBD.
Who is the biggest star in the men's Final Four? Karen says it is Zach Edey. BP says the correct answer is DJ Burns.
DJ Burns is America's hero. NC State is America's team.
Who do you want to see advance tonight? Iowa and Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese and LSU? 82% want the Hawkeyes tonight.
82%?
82% of the votes.
Oh, I don't agree with that. I'm way more 50-50 about this. I'd be happy no matter who advances because all of the players on both of these teams are electric. But, I understand why Caitlin Clark's America's sweetheart.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. I'll talk to you tonight on Primetime about 8. Blaine and Mickey got you covered up next.